Alarms do not sound the same on an alien ship. On my second week aboard the Scarrow flagship, I learned that a rising three-note chime does not mean danger. It means someone important wants you now, and if you are slow, you might not get a second chance to matter. That chime was screaming through the corridor when two guards grabbed my arms and pulled me out of the engine bay without a word of explanation. My name is Callum Reed, and 6 months ago, I was fixing tractor engines in a small town nobody outside my county could find on a map. Now I was being marched through a starship the size of a floating city, my hands still smudged with grease that no alien cleaning drone could ever explain away. I did not know where we were going until the guards stopped in front of a door made of dark, polished bone. Only then did it hit me. This was the Queen's private chamber. Nobody outside her own bloodline was allowed near this door, let alone through it. The door opened on its own, and I was pushed inside before I could ask a single question. The Queen of the Scarrow Ascendancy, Vantrisa Corahel Ashan, was sitting on the floor of her own chamber like a soldier who had lost a battle. Her guards were not near her. Her advisors were not near her. She was alone, holding something in both hands, the way a person holds a wounded animal, gently, desperately, afraid to make it worse. I had heard stories about the Ashan rod before I ever set foot on this ship. Every soldier spoke about it in hushed voices, like it was a living relic rather than a weapon. It was said to have passed from queen to queen for 11 generations, glowing faintly, humming softly, never once going dark. It was dark now. "You are the human who repairs what my engineers cannot," she said without looking up. Her translator gave her voice a strange metallic edge, but under it, I could hear something raw, something close to panic. "I fix engines," I said carefully. "I don't know anything about your weapons." "It is not only a weapon," she said, finally lifting her eyes to mine. They were deep black, reflecting the low light of the room like wet glass. "In 6 days, the succession court meets. If the rod does not wake before then, they will say the ascendancy itself has turned away from me. They will remove me from my throne." I did not fully understand the politics, but I understood fear. I had seen it plenty of times in my own world, on faces staring at a car that would not start before a job interview, or a generator that failed during a storm. Fear does not need translation. She held the rod out toward me. Up close, it looked less like metal and more like a fossilized branch, veined with threads of light that had gone completely cold. 3 thin cracks ran along its surface, and where the light used to pulse, there was nothing but stillness. Her own engineers stood along the far wall, arms crossed, faces carved from stone. One of them, a tall scarrow named Doran, muttered something under his breath in his own language. I was not supposed to understand it, but months on this ship had taught me more than anyone realized. "It is not a machine," he said quietly to another engineer. "You cannot mend a soul with human hands." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was about to fail in front of the last person on this ship who could get me killed with a single word. But nobody had asked me to mend a soul. They had asked me to look, and looking was the one thing I knew how to do better than anyone in this room. I knelt beside the Queen and studied the rod, the way I would study an engine nobody else could diagnose. Their scanners were advanced beyond anything human science had built, but advanced tools have a strange weakness. They only look for what they expect to find. Scarrow technology had grown so far beyond wires and circuits that their engineers had forgotten how to check for something as simple as a broken connection. Underneath the fossilized shell, hidden beneath layers their scanners had never bothered to search, I found it. A thin lattice of conductive material, corroded at 3 tiny points. It was almost embarrassing how simple the damage was. Not a mystery, not a curse, just 3 broken connections, the kind of thing I had fixed 100 times in machines far less important than a queen's ancient birthright. "I need tools," I said, "not your tools, something I can hold and control with my own hands." Doran let out a short, sharp laugh. "We do not use such primitive instruments here." Then find me some, I said, meeting his eyes. Or explain to your queen why her rod stayed silent, because you were too proud to look in your own storage archives. Silence pressed down on the room. Then, surprisingly, one of the younger engineers slipped out and returned with a small case of old manual instruments, dusty from years of neglect. Vantrisa did not say a word. She simply watched, her eyes fixed on my hands like they held the last thread connecting her to something she could not bear to lose. The work took hours. My back ached from bending over a surface never designed for a human body. My eyes burned from staring through a magnifier not built for my vision. Every few minutes, I felt the weight of every pair of eyes in that room, waiting for me to fail, waiting for the human experiment to collapse under pressure the way they clearly expected it to. I did not fail. I coaxed a thin strand of conductive filament into the broken points, guiding it patiently along the natural pathways instead of forcing it to obey mine. It was slow, careful work, the kind that demanded patience more than skill. When I finally sealed the last connection, I sat back and looked at Vantrisa. "Try it now," I said. She lifted the rod with trembling hands. For a moment, nothing happened, and my stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick right there on the floor of a queen's chamber. Then a soft pulse of light crawled up through the fossilized branches, like the first light of dawn breaking across a dark field. The room fell completely silent. Vantrisa stared at the glowing rod like she was looking at a ghost. Her mandibles trembled, and her dark eyes filled with something that could only be described as tears, catching the light in a way I had never seen on an alien face before. She reached out and grabbed my wrist with a grip far stronger than I expected, strong enough that I almost gasped, but she did not let go. "You gave her back to me," she whispered. Her voice had changed completely. Gone was the formal, translated tone she used with advisors and soldiers. This was raw, broken, almost childlike. I did not understand what she meant, but every engineer in that room understood immediately. I watched them stiffen, one by one, then look away, as if they had accidentally walked into something too private to witness. "The rod does not only strike," Vantrisa said, still holding my wrist, as though letting go would break the moment forever. "It remembers. Every queen who has carried it leaves behind a thread of herself when she dies. A voice, a memory. My mother lives inside this rod, along with every queen before her, for 11 generations." Her grip tightened, and for the first time since I had met her, she looked less like a ruler and more like a daughter. "When the light went dark 3 days ago, I did not fear losing my throne," she continued. "I feared I had lost her a second time. That because I failed to protect this rod, I had let my mother die again, in silence, with no one to hear her voice ever again." I stood there, a simple mechanic from a small town most people had never heard of, holding the wrist of a queen who commanded thousands of ships, and I had nothing clever to say. There was no manual for this moment. No training back home could have prepared me for the weight pressing down on that small, quiet room. "Your people still build with your own hands," she said softly. "You have not forgotten how. We grew so advanced that we forgot how to fix the very things that hold our memories, our history, our mothers. You did not simply repair a weapon today. You gave a queen back her mother's voice. In a room full of my own kind who could not." She released my wrist, only to press her palm flat against my chest, just above my heart. It was a gesture I had never seen before, and by the way every engineer in the room drew a sharp breath, I understood immediately that it meant something significant, something reserved only for family. "You are Ashan kin now," she said, "whether the court accepts it or not." Doran did not meet my eyes as I left the chamber. None of the engineers did. I never learned exactly what happened in the political meetings that followed, whether her throne was fully secured, or whether the title she gave me carried any real weight among her people. After that day, I stopped chasing explanations. Some things are not meant to be understood completely. They are meant to be carried quietly, the way you carry a memory too heavy to explain to anyone who was not there. But her whisper stays with me more than anything else from that day. More than the corroded lattice, more than the tools I had to fight to get, more than the tension in that silent room. You did not simply repair a weapon today, you gave a queen back her mother's voice. We build with our hands because we have not forgotten how to look closely at the small, fragile, breakable things everyone else has stopped noticing. And in the right room, at the right moment, that quiet skill turned out to matter more than any weapon ever could.